This LOS is calculate and interpret the net present value and the internal rate of return of an investment. The steps in computing net present value and applying the net present value rule are as follows. Number 1, identify all cash flows associated with the investment, all the inflows and all the outflows. Number 2, determine the appropriate discount rate or opportunity cost for the investment project. Number 3, using that discount rate, find the present value of each cash flow. Inflows have a positive sign, increased net present value. Outflows have a negative sign, decreased net present value. Sum all the present values. The sum of the present values of all cash flows, inflows and outflows, is the investment's net present value. Then you apply the net present value rule. If the investment's net present value is positive, an investor should undertake it. If the net present value is negative, the investor should not undertake it. If an investor has two candidates for investment but can only invest in one, that's what we call the mutually exclusive project. The investor should choose the candidate with the higher positive net present value. In the CFA Level 1, we need this because this is a flash forward to capital budgeting. And in capital budgeting, the learning outcome statements are explain how the evaluation and selection of capital projects is affected by mutually exclusive projects, project sequencing, and capital rationing. Again, mutually exclusive means I have two projects, but I can only do one. So I'm going to choose the one with the higher net present value. Another LOS under capital budgeting, calculate and interpret the net present value, internal rate of return, payback period, discounted payback period, and profitability index. Explain the NPV profile, compare the NPV and IRR methods. So you can see we learn about NPV and IRR in more than one place in the CFA Level 1 program. So here's just a little example of calculating a net present value. We have a project where the initial outflow is 50. This could be 50 million or 50,000, which has just been rounded down to 50. And then we have three cash flows coming in, 16, 16, 16, the same. And then finally a cash flow in T4 of 20. And so what we do is we calculate the present value of each cash flow. We add them up. And we subtract the initial outlay because there's no, that's at time 0, so there's no present valuing to it. And you can see that in this case, we have a positive net present value of 3.4499. Now there's two ways that you can do this on the calculator. Number 1, you could calculate the present value of each of those cash flows, and we're using a discount rate of 10%. Or we can use the cash flow functionality on the calculator. And we'll just quickly show you both ways. Okay, so the first way that we can do it is we can use the time value of money functionality on the calculator. And you can see for each of the cash flows, I'll only do one. I won't go through all the steps. You just are going to repeat it. So you can see for the first cash flow at T1, the future value is 16. So first of all, you're going to check your PY. Oops, see that was set at 12. So that was something we were doing on monthly. We're just going to change that to 1. And so we have 16, which is our future value, 0 payment, and the interest rate we said we're using 10%, 10 IY, and it's for one period, 1N, and we're going to compute the present value, and we've got 14.54545. Now remember, it comes up negative on the calculator because I did the cash flows coming in as a positive to you. So when one has to be negative and one has to be positive on the calculator. But remember, that's a positive cash flow coming in, okay? So here on the left-hand side, we're also just showing the algebra, which you'll recall. Present value equals the future value divided by 1 plus r to the n. And so if we, in this case, using the time value money functionality, you calculate the present value of each of the cash flows, add them up, subtract the initial outlay, and we'll get to the positive NPV of 3.4499. And again, you invest if the NPV is greater than 0. Do not invest if the NPV is less than 0. Okay, we can also solve this problem using the cash flow functionality on the calculator. So here the CF, if we hit that, and second, we're going to clear all our work and hit enter. So here again, if we hit the cash flow, we can type in the cash flows and calculate the net present value and IRR using this functionality along this row on the calculator. Okay, so as I showed you there, clear all the previous work. You press the cash flow, then second, and clear work. Down here is the clear work. It's above the CE key. Okay, and the CF then is displayed as 0, correct? Then you're going to enter the cash flows. If it's an outflow, if it's out of your pocket, you're going to hit the plus minus sign to make it a negative. If it's an inflow, it's positive, and then for each time you do a cash flow, it's going to be enter. So we're going to do the example, but just to show you just very quickly, for that first cash flow is 50,000 out of our pocket. That was a negative, so you do 50, hit the plus minus key, and then you hit enter, and then again we're going to be using the arrow keys. We would hit arrow down, and I would be at my first cash flow. But we're going to show you that in more detail in the next slides coming up. So again, just some calculator tips for you, as because when you're doing this for the first time, sometimes it just helps to get a little bit of instruction. So this slide is just showing you, yeah, you can use the arrow up and arrow down to check your work. So if I arrow up, that's going to take me back, and I can see my initial cash flow. If I arrow down, that's the first cash flow. Remember, that one was going to be 16. We're going to hit enter, then we're going to arrow down. And you see here, we get, it says F01. What does that mean? That means frequency of the cash flow. If you've got the same frequency, for example, in our example, we had 16 3 times, you could hit 3 and then enter, and then you don't have to enter each cash flow because you had 16, and then you arrowed down, you entered it, arrowed it down, and then you had a frequency 3 times. You had that cash flow coming 3 times in a row. Then you'd arrow down, and you would just, for the next cash flow, which was the last one, you'd hit 20, and that would be it, okay? If you, just going back, if you don't have the same cash flows, you would keep that frequency as just 1, and you would arrow through it, and then you would enter your new cash flows, okay? And then, so to change the counter, enter the correct count, hit enter, then arrow down. Once you've entered all the cash flows, to find the net present value is really easy. We just come here to the NPV key and we hit NPV. Then it says I is going to appear on the screen, and we're going to enter the interest rate, which we were using 10%. So we'd hit 10, we'd hit enter, and then we would arrow down again. NPV is giving us 0. We would just hit compute, and there's our 3.4499. And it's as easy as that. To calculate the IRR, you would just hit the IRR key, and you would hit compute, and we have an internal rate of return 13.041. Okay, on the calculator, I just showed you that we had 16 3 times, so I changed the frequency to 3. But I just want to show you, if those numbers were different, how you scroll through on the uneven cash flows. Just do it one more time for fun. So I can hit the cash flow. I want to clear my work. So second, clear my work, okay? So the initial cash flow is 50. It's out of our pocket, negative. We're going to hit enter. We're going to arrow down. First cash flow is 16. We're going to hit enter, arrow down, but this time I'm going to enter them individually. So I'm going to just keep that frequency at 1. If they were different numbers, this is what you need to do. Cash flow 2 is 16, enter, arrow down. The frequency, we're just going to keep that as 1. Cash flow 3, 16, enter, arrow down, and we got to our cash flow 4, which is our 20. We're going to hit 20, enter, arrow down, and oh, sorry, you see that? That's a common mistake. The frequency I hit, and that's what you need to look out for on the test. I didn't arrow down very well. I missed my click. So frequency on cash flow 3 was 1. Arrow down, then I could see very clearly C4. And that, I just wanted to show you that because that's a mistake that when you're working too fast on the calculator can often happen. You hit enter. So as I said, sometimes if you make a mistake, always just go back and check your work very quickly. CFO negative 50, arrow down. C1, 16, frequency 1. C2, 16, frequency 1. C3, 16, frequency 1. C4, 20. We're in good shape. Make sure there's nothing at C5, no old data. You cleared your work. Fantastic. You're going to hit NPV, and the interest rate is 10%. Hit enter, arrow down, hit compute, 3.4499. Hit the IRR button, hit compute, 13.04169. Fantastic. Okay, I did this slide very quickly, and it's just to show you one point. And I'm keeping all the same cash flows, But when I go to calculate the net present value, I'm going to use that IRR number, that 13.04169. And it's just to illustrate the point. What is the internal rate of return? What is the IRR? It's the discount rate that makes the net present value of a project equals 0. Okay, that's fairly important. So if I just go back to my cash flows, you can see I'm just going to keep the exact same cash flows. But when I hit the NPV key, I'm going to change it to my 13.04169, and I'm going to hit enter. Okay, then I'm going to arrow down and I'm going to compute my net present value, and I get 0. So that's it, folks. What is the internal rate of return? What is the IRR? It's the discount rate that makes the NPV of a project equal 0. Okay, this is the last slide for this LOS, and it's problems with the IRR rule. So the IRR and NPV rules give the same accept or reject decision when projects are independent. That is, when the decision to invest in one project does not affect the decision to undertake another. When a company cannot finance all the projects it would like to undertake, that is, when projects are mutually exclusive, it must rank the projects from most profitable to least. However, rankings according to IRR and NPV may not be the same. The IRR and NPV rules rank projects differently when the size or scale of the projects differs, okay? Or the timing of the cash flows differs. When the IRR and NPV rules conflict in ranking projects, we should undertake directions from the NPV rule. So the NPV rule rules. Why that preference? The NPV of an investment represents the expected addition to shareholder wealth from an investment, and we take the maximization of shareholder wealth to be a basic financial objective of a company. So that's a real key point. When you're analyzing projects, you're looking at the IRR and NPV. We're always going to choose the project with the highest net present value because in theory, the net present value is the expected addition to shareholder wealth from an investment, and we always want to maximize shareholder wealth. That's the end for this LOS. Thank you.